Hi, I'm Mia Friedman, and you're listening to No Filter, conversations that go there. In her 41 years, Glennon Doyle has worn a lot of very different capes. The best-selling American author has been a recovering bulimic, alcoholic, drug user, wife, mother, Christian mummy blogger, an activist, but her most recent cape is the one that really has changed her life. A couple of years ago, in 2016, Glennon published her New York Times best-selling book, Love Warrior, which is absolutely brilliant. And I just read it over the summer break and I devoured every word. It's about putting her marriage back together after discovering that her husband and the father of her children had been cheating on her throughout their marriage. The book went on to become part of Oprah's book club selection and put her in the same realm as her friends, Elizabeth Gilbert and Brene Brown. Her writing about marriage and herself and motherhood was as raw and honest and hilarious and real as you will find. But it was after the book was released that things got really interesting because Glennon had a realization that flipped her world upside down and inside out. She fell in love with a woman named Abby Wambach, and she's never been happier. Abby is now her wife. They have the most fantastic blended family. And here's Glennon Doyle in one of the most enjoyable conversations I have ever had. Glennon, hello.
Mia, how are you?
I'm so good. I'm so excited to talk to you, and sorry that it took a little while to get the technology happening.
That's always the challenge. Once we get through that, we're fine, right?
It's really true. So I guess I wanted to start by you talk in the book about being evicted from your life twice. And I'll get to those two times in a second, but I want to actually start with the third time that you were evicted from your life in a different way, which is the day that you met Abby.
Yeah, the day I met Abby. Oh my God. Well, I will tell you that, as you know, if you've read Love Warrior, I think the whole book was me trying to understand what love was, right? And also just trying to figure out who I was, like not who everyone else was telling me to be, but, you know, my voice, like what I wanted out of my life. Because, you know, during the separation from Craig, God, it all happened so publicly, and everybody had an idea of what I should do. You know, everybody on earth had an idea of, you know, a good role model would do this, a good feminist would do this, a good Christian would do this. Everybody had a different idea. And so I learned to stay sane and to make sure I was making decisions that were true to myself. I had to just block out every other voice in the world and start to sit with myself. And I would just sit in my house and just listen, just sit still and just try to hear this inner voice. And what happened was I got really good at hearing it, trying to please everyone else on earth. And I started following this inner voice. And damned if a year later I'm not sitting in a room and Abby walks in, and it's the first time I'd ever seen her in my life. I'd never in my life been, you know, even kissed a girl, right? So I had no context for what was about to happen to me. But she walked in the room, and I'm telling you that it was like that voice that I had been practicing hearing and trusting just screamed. And my whole self was like, there she is. And I just knew. And I'm telling you, I feel like such a freak when I say that, because I never even believed in romantic love, much less love at first sight, right? I thought it was all Disney crap. I thought that everybody was just making it up. But I knew from the first that she walked into the room, and, you know, it wasn't but maybe a month later that we started talking in letters. And a month later, I sat down with Craig and said, it's over. I'm in love. And I, by the way, Abby and I hadn't even seen each other outside of that room. We spent 10 minutes together and then dismantled our entire lives to be together when we had not even been in the same room alone together one time.
Did you recognize it for romantic love? I mean, you obviously did, because I've often felt like I've met another woman and we've clicked, right? Or I've just gone, wow, I want to be around you. You're amazing. And it, you know, you can even sort of go on dates and it can be the birth of a close female friendship. How did you have the context to know oh, this is different.
Yeah, no.
You didn't want to be her friend.
Yeah, it wasn't like, I mean, my goodness, like my whole life is female relationships, right?
Yeah.
Like that, right? That's all what I live for, you know. My sister, my good friends, no. It wasn't that. It was like immediate sweat from head to toe. Like, if I'm not with this human being, I will die. Like that. It wasn't like a friendship. Wow. It was like a recognizing. And that's how we both describe it. Like, it didn't feel like a meeting. It felt like a recognizing. But it was very different than when I meet a girl and I'm like, you're cool, I want to have coffee. It wasn't like that.
Things that can start fast can often end fast. Were you worried about that?
Sure. I was worried about everything. I was so scared. My God, I had so much to worry about at that time. Mm. But it's interesting, like when you say fast, it did happen fast and it didn't. I mean, we didn't even touch each other or hug each other, or like we had to go through things so methodically. We both recognized this as a love that had a capacity to be so great that it required us to give up every single thing before it to have it, and also to do it with complete and total honor. So there was no sneaking around. There was no anything. Like, I knew I had to sit down with Craig and tell him everything the moment I knew it and accepted it. And that was crazy. I mean, I remember sitting with Abby and being like, are we seriously going to do this before we've ever even kissed? Like, are we insane? And it was just, you know what? It was the craziness and the insanity of it that made me understand that it was the first thing that I knew was true for me in my heart, because it didn't make sense to anybody else. It certainly wasn't that I was pleasing anybody else or taking a path that anybody else had put in front of me, you know, like trusting that love that I had for Abby and going for it and marrying her and dealing with all of the fallout and walking my family through it is the first thing I've ever done as a truly free woman, I think.
I mean, do you see it as another eviction? It was like a positive eviction, but it was certainly a dismantling of everything that you thought you knew about your life and your future.
For sure. I mean, I've had so many of those, right?
Yeah.
Like when I was 25, I mean, I got sober when I was 25, and I got sober. I was sitting on a bathroom floor, hungover, and I was holding a positive pregnancy test. And I remember thinking, oh my God, like that felt like actually holding an eviction notice, you know, like your life will now be divided in between the before and after of this moment. And if you want this thing, if you want to become a mother, you can have it, but you will have to give up everything else you were to have it. And you listen, that life was worth giving up. I mean, that was a crappy life. I was a drunk. I was a bulimic. Disaster, right? So that was not hard to let go of. It was an obvious, to me, choice. I think the evictions are harder when what you're giving up is good. It's just not beautiful and it's not true. You know, like my life in my family with my ex-husband, who he and I are still dear friends and we raise our family together. It was good enough, but it wasn't as true and beautiful as, you know, this life that I have now, and we just get this one. And so I just knew that there was something that had some more magic in it than what I was settling for.
The first eviction, there was an element of choice in it because you could choose what you did on that bathroom floor, right? But the second time, tell me about that. You were sitting in a therapist's office with Craig.
Yeah. So I was I was in a marriage therapy, and we were doing what we would call marriage maintenance, right? You know, just, I don't know, we thought it was what we're supposed to do. And he told me that he had something to tell me. And the thing that he had to tell me was that he had been unfaithful throughout our whole marriage, like from when we first got married. And I didn't have a clue. And I always thought people that said they didn't have a clue were like dense, but I really didn't know. And so, I remember getting in the car after that session by myself, of course, and really feeling the same way that I did on the bathroom floor. Like, oh, okay. That was a comfortable life I had, and now it's over. And it was way different than the first time because, I knew that the life I was living the first time wasn't good enough, right? Like I was sick and broken and addicted. But the second life that I made, like I was trying to do everything right. I was like a mom and a wife and like a writer and a nonprofit. Like I was like I was an upright citizen. I was like doing all the things. And I just thought, oh, like being a good girl and being a good wife and being a mom, that didn't work either. like I was a bad girl the first half of my life and that didn't work. And then I was a good girl the second half of my life and that didn't work. Right? So it's interesting because you mentioned Liz before. I was talking to Liz during that time and we used to have this quote that we'd say back and forth to each other. It was John Steinbeck and it was, now that I'm done being perfect, I can be good. And then Liz said, you know what? I'm so tired of being good. Now that I'm done being good, I can be free. And I just remember thinking, I think at that moment I figured out, oh my God, like I need to figure out who the hell I am. Because I've tried it both ways. I tried to be the perfect woman and that left me on the bathroom floor, metaphorically, but still. And so, that eviction, I think I remember going to therapy after that and my therapist saying, well, we can't fix your marriage. Like that takes two people and what happens there will remain to be seen. But we can use this pain to dive into it and try to heal you. And so that's what I did for the next couple years. I just fought to, find what my voice and find what I really wanted and fought to forgive. And I did forgive. I forgave Craig. I understand that he was a person who dealt with his pain, I think, through sex and women. And I was a person who dealt with my pain through drugs and alcohol. I get it, right? And then I also learned that you can forgive someone and still not want to be married to them forever.
You talk about a beautiful analogy of us all being born with three parts, and for you and Craig both evicting one of those parts of yourself from the island. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I think this is it's something I think about all the time, and I feel like it's probably something you guys in your work in the world run into. And I think it has something to do with the healing of the world right now. It's like something that I learned through therapy. So many of us that believe that a whole person is some combination of like what we would call body, mind, and spirit. And I think that little girls, at such an early age, we just get so many messages about our bodies that are so confusing. And they're shaming messages. If our body doesn't match a perfect idea of what the world says it should look like, then we should be ashamed of it. Even if our body does match what the world says it should be, then we should be ashamed of it because we shouldn't be sexual or we shouldn't hunger or we shouldn't, and then besides the shame, it's an unsafe place to live in your body as a woman. We know that. I mean, we know the numbers of how many women are assaulted. And so we just get such objectifying and shaming and dangerous messages about our bodies that we do many of us do somewhere along the way, subconsciously just kind of stop living in our bodies. And we just vote it off the island of ourselves. And we become broken, like not whole, because we learn from the culture that our bodies are not divine vessels of wisdom and love, which they are. We learn they're just something to kind of be commodified, which I think down the road is why so many of us have such confusion around sex, right? I know so many women, so many of my friends who end up just going through the motions during sex, who feel angry during sex, who feel used during sex. We know how to be desired, but we don't really know what it means to desire, and we know how to be wanted. We know how to wear the right things and pose the right ways and giggle the right way and but we don't know what we want. We don't live in our bodies. And so the boys, the same exact thing happens to them, right? They're born body, mind, and soul. But while the world is telling us that good girls don't desire, don't hunger, it's telling the boys that brave boys don't cry, don't feel, don't make themselves vulnerable in any way, right? So the boys vote their emotional lives off the island. And so they're trying to love us with their bodies, but we don't live there, and we're trying to love them with our minds and our emotions, but they don't live there because that's not safe for them. And we just miss each other and miss each other and miss each other, right? So some of the work in the world, we always say the political, what's happening in a macro level is always what's happening in a micro level, right? Like what happens in our relationships is we have to figure out how to undo these ideas of masculinity and femininity so real men and women can love each other and see each other and know each other. And I think that's what we're seeing out in the world. We're seeing what toxic masculinity does to men. And I think some of that's starting to be undone, and we're learning how to just be fully human with each other.
You talk also about this idea of, and you write a lot in Love Warrior about outsides not matching insides, and about sending our representative out into the world. What representative did you send out into the world, particularly as a wife and a mother, in those years before you were evicted?
Well, I mean, lucky for me, I found recovery before I became a mom. So I sat in my first, recovery meetings and saw for the first time what it means to not have a representative, right? I saw what it means to be really honest and really truthful. And I just remember sitting in my first meeting thinking, oh my God, this is it. These are the first honest people I've met in my whole life. Like, this is what I want to do. Like, why can we only be this honest for 1 hour in the basement? How weird, right? So truly, I mean, becoming honest with that blog, with Momastery Online, that was my effort. That was my, I want to turn the world into one recovery meeting, right? Like, why can't we do this all the time? That was my effort to not have a representative, to live with integrity. I think of integrity all the time, and I think to a lot of people, integrity means like do the right thing. And I don't even know what the right thing is, right? I mean, that's so relative. I don't think of it that way. I just think of having a life of integrity. It just means integrated, right? It means like your outer self, what you say and do on the outside matches your insides, like your values and what you believe. So I don't know. I think I figured out that writing was a way that I could get out all that stuff that was on the inside, because I understood at that point that everyone in my everyday life didn't actually want to hear how I was. Like when people say, how are you? Most of them just don't really want to know. Okay. So I learned that the hard way a few times, because after that recovery meeting, I was like, this is amazing. We can just people will say, how are you? And I'll be like, well, actually, my marriage is struggling and I'm feeling really lonely. And they told me parenting would be awesome, but I'm losing my mind. They actually don't hear that.
Talk about the mother's group. What happened when you went to mother's group that time?
So I got invited. Sister, for whatever reason, I stayed home with my 3 kids. Okay. I don't know why. That was another thing that I thought I was supposed to do. So I did it. But I am a person that has very high anxiety anyway. So staying home with my kids, anyway, they would have been safer on the streets, okay, than they were with me. So this woman down the street invited me to go to a play date. So that's where you just sit on the couch and the kids throw things and you just sweat. And everybody says things like, oh my God, he's never like this. Like he must be teething. You just lie. Everybody just lies. So that's great fun. And I remember this woman turning to me, and I just had the littlest one. So I just had Emma. So I had 3 kids at home, just dripping with children, And one of the ladies turned to me and said, Glennon, you just got the baby at home. How do you feel? And I was actually so excited because I thought, oh my God, we're going to talk about how we feel, So I remember saying, okay, I'll tell you how I feel. How there are 2 kinds of volcanoes? There are dormant volcanoes. Well, they're active volcanoes, and the active volcanoes are spewing lava all the time, right? But there's dormant volcanoes, and dormant volcanoes look calm, right? They look quiet, but inside they're just bubbling with scalding hot lava that at any moment could explode and kill everything in the vicinity. That's how I feel.
Such a perfect description of being home alone with children.
Yeah. I'm smiling and dormant on the outside. On the inside, I'm deadly, right? I could go off at any given moment. And listen, I was really proud of that metaphor. Like I worked hard on it. I felt like, but nobody, it was just crickets. Crickets. Nothing. Everybody was just like blank staring at me.
No.
And I was like, oh God, we can't even be honest at these friggin' play dates, right? So soon after that is when, I just figured I got to find a way. It wasn't even, it felt like part of my sobriety. Like I have to find a place where it's okay to be honest,
Because what were you expected to say? What did your representative do then?
Well, I think that women and mothers in particular are supposed to constantly pretend that their whole life is a freaking Disney movie. That like things were hard at one point, but then there was the wedding, and after that, I just changed into a whole nother freaking person. And I just, sit around all day with my prince and just brush my long, gorgeous hair. And that's it. My life is just a ball now, it's just a ball. And that parenting has fulfilled me in every way, right? That it is the mountaintop experience of my life that I never, ever, also women are never allowed to feel angry.
Why is that?
A little, any negative emotion. I really think that women see it as a sign of failure. Which, like, if life is hard in any way, if parenting is hard, if marriage is hard, if friendship is hard, if faith is hard, if sex is hard, if any of these things are hard, then that's a sign that you are doing it wrong. Which is utter insanity, right? Because actually what I've learned over the years, just working alongside the most honest, amazing women, is that often life, our relationships and career and all parenting and marriage are often hardest for the people who are doing them right? Who are showing up vulnerably and like putting themselves out there in big ways and failing and getting knocked down and trying again and like risking and losing. So, I think that what I've learned over the years is that like life isn't hard because you're doing it wrong. Life is just hard because it's designed that way. Right?
It's a feature, not a flaw. Yeah.
Right. So like there's only two types of people. There's types of people for whom life is hard, and there are liars. That is it.
And you had another go at it when you wrote a list.
Yeah, this was kind of a nightmare actually. So during that time when I was trying to find a place to be honest, I was at home with the babies, and I remember putting the little one down for a nap, and I passed my computer and I was on Facebook, and people were doing this thing called the 25 things. So they were like putting out lists of 25 things about themselves. So I was like, oh, hot damn, I could do this. I could make a list. That's so fun. So I sat down and made my list, just real quick, made the list, sent it off. Okay. And I went and I don't know, probably took a nap or something, came back, and I opened up my computer and I was like, what the hell is going on? I had like 30 new emails in my inbox, and my sister had called me 3 times in a row. And that's usually like our bat signal that I've done something inappropriate that like other people don't do. That's going to, So this is what happened. I didn't read anyone else's list before I wrote mine. So I wrote mine in my honest way. So my number 7, I'll never forget this. My number 7 was, I'm a recovering alcoholic and food addict, but I still find myself missing booze. In the same twisted way, we can miss those who repeatedly beat us and leave us for dead.
Cool.
Okay? Right? Except that here's my friend Sam's number 7. My favorite snack food is hummus. Okay? This is how freaking everyone else was doing their list. And for me, that was not even my most dramatic one, right? Number 7. That was just like easing them in. So all of mine were like that. They were like real, like my real self, So I wanted to die. I actually remember calling my sister and saying, how do I take it back? Like, help me get this off the interwebs. And she was like, it's done. You can't. It's done. Just close the computer. This is too much power. You can't have a computer, right? So I felt horrible about everything in my life for 24 hours. And then I started opening those emails. Like I got brave enough to open those emails. And I can't tell you They were so beautiful. They were emails from people who I had known my whole life, but I had never really known them because we had been so busy pretending like everything was perfect with each other and staying on the surface of things that we had never gone deeper, and we had never shown each other the things that keep us up at night, the things that we were put down on this earth to help each other walk through. So they would say things like, I just read your list and my husband's an alcoholic and, we've been struggling alone. Me too. And me too. And that's when I realized, like this truth telling thing, it's scary, and it will turn some people off, but it's also like a magical key that unlocks people, because if what we're really put here to do is like really be seen and known, then how else can you do it without revealing your true self? It's like we settle for admiration. We all, if I act perfect, if I act like everything's easy and shiny and I like straighten my hair and like just, pretend that everything's perfect, then people will admire me. And being admired is fine, but it's really, really lonely because it's not the same as being known.
It's a prison.
Yes.
You felt less alone, right?
Absolutely. And I felt free. The thing about hiding yourself all the time is then you walk around constantly scared. Why are women so fearful? Because many of us are walking around pretending all the time. And when you're pretending all the time, you are constantly on some level afraid you're going to get found out, right? I'm never afraid I'm going to get found out. I have outed myself in every way possible. Like no one can write an expose on me. I write my own expose every day, right? Like there's nothing left. It's just you walk around just brave. You walk around open and free and unafraid and brave. And the thing is that everyone doesn't like you, and that's okay because there's no rule in the world that says that everyone needs to like you. You don't need to be liked by everyone. You only need to be loved by a few.
Do you think that's a female thing, this desire for approval? And do you think that we shed it in our 40s? I'm 46 and my God, I love my 40s.
Oh my God, sister. There needs to be a campaign like they had for the gay kids, for women. It gets better. It gets better. Hang in there. I would not go back to my 20s or my 30s for all the money in the world. The 40s, it's something you just run. We call it like running out of F's to give.
Yes.
Like, I don't care anymore. I don't care anymore about the stupid crap. And the beautiful thing is, and I can tell from you in your work, is when you stop caring about the things that don't matter, you can give yourself so mightily to the things that do matter. We waste so much of our time and worry. And yes, I do think it's a female thing. I really do. I mean, we are we are so obsessed with being liked and admired that we forgo being loved and known. And being liked and admired leaves us lonely. And like, who needs a million friends anyway? You only need a couple.
There have been 2 times, when you ended your marriage with Craig and then when you fell in love with Abby. They must have been times when you really had to be very clear and true in who you were, right? Because I imagine that the whole world had a lot of opinions about those things. To put it mildly.
So when I found Abby, I knew that I had found the thing that there is no other thing. It was like my whole life I was kind of like, really? This is it? Just about life in general. And after I met Abby, I just knew that I had found, like, life would still be hard and things would still happen, but that I had found the thing, right? The holy grail, like this kind of love. And Abby felt the same way. So, when we started telling people about it, and people would have their opinions, and it wasn't, I think like other people, when you reveal your truth, whether that's who you love or who you want to be in the world, it's not the people that don't like you and say the horrible things that's hard. It's the people who love you and are scared for you and say the wrong, like their fear comes out in judgment. And it's our friends, it's our family. That's what is hardest, And I remember when that would happen and Abby would say, okay, we're an island. she'd always say, okay, so we're on an island. Our island is love, and our island is surrounded by a moat, and the moat is filled with deadly alligators. And no one is allowed to bring anything to our island except for love and acceptance and celebration. So there will be no fear allowed on our island, because all we have here is truth, and we know what's true. We know we found this love, and everything else, all the other judgments, it's just fear, right? Mm. So the beauty of that is that I think when we make these big changes or we reveal who we are to our people, we think we have to argue with them into agreement with us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We do. We think we have to convince them to agree with us, to approve of us. But Abby and I didn't do any of that, even with our closest people. So like with our closest people, when they would call us and say the fearful things or whatever, I mean, I would say, I hear your fear, and it sounds like it's really hard for you. And I wish you the best with that. And when you are ready to come to us with nothing but love and celebration, we will lower the drawbridge for you, but not one freaking second sooner. And that was it, right? It became this clear thing, which I think also happens in our 40s, which I'm a grown-ass woman. I don't have to convince you of anything, right? I am a grown-ass woman. I'm paying my freaking bills. And you think I'm going to spend any time that I have left on this earth convincing you to be pleased? You know, we used to say, you do what you need to do and you be who you are. And other people will either come around or they will stop coming around. And either way, lovely, right? Mm-hmm. So what happens when you let people have their problem, you know, other people's fear and judgment was not my problem. It was a problem, but it was very clearly their problem, right? Yeah. So when I let them have it, there's not a single person in my life who did not eventually work out their fear and come to our island with love and celebration. We lost no one. But that is because the only way to convince your people that you are okay and happy is to actually be okay and happy. And you cannot be okay and happy when you're being defensive or argumentative because you think it's part of your job to convince them that you're okay. You just have to carry on being okay and tell them to join you at your love celebration when they're ready.
Who were the first people on the island with you?
Lizzie, my sister. For a very long time, it was just them. It was just
Population 4.
Yeah. Abby, sister, Liz, me. That was it. I mean, because listen, it was so scary and like, it felt like it was so precious and beautiful. It felt like, I remember talking to Liz, and it feels like a teeny little like beautiful bud, like a flower that is not ready for any storm.
No.
Right? No. Like it's not ready for the public storm. It's not ready for, so for a while it was just that little crew of women that I do trust with my life. And then Craig was the next person, because when I finally decided, when I let my heart and spirit and body all come together and that moment of admitting, yes, I am in love with this person and there is no way of going back after this. Once I knew that, I knew I had to tell Craig right away, because I didn't think that I owed him the rest of my life, but I knew I owed him honesty.
Because you guys had patched up your marriage after his confession of infidelity, and you'd separated for a while, and Love Warrior talks about your path back to each other. And it doesn't end, to me, it doesn't end in a happily ever after, but it's, you did repair it to an extent. But meeting Abby was the deal breaker for you. Was that, without wanting to pry, that must have been a shock to him, because he probably thought he was the one that was...
Yeah, so it's so amazing, because when I think back on that, I mean, from Love Warrior, like the lengths we went to forgive each other. I mean, oh my God, we worked so hard. And I'm so grateful for all of that, because I think at the time I thought we were working so hard so that we could have our happily ever after, right?
Yeah.
But I think, which by the way, we have like the fairy tale divorce. So I don't think that any of that work to forgive each other was wasted, because I think that's why we can have what we have right now. Because we did all of that work. Like, we really don't hate each other. Like, we really did forgive each other. And you know, and I worked my ass off. I worked my ass off to try to
It's not easy. Therapy.
Find the humanity between us that could make me understand him. And I did, because what I figured out along the way is, oh, you know, I kept saying to myself, how could he hurt me like this? Like, how could you hurt someone that you love like that? And somewhere along the way, I realized, oh, I know how you can do that, because I did that my whole freaking life. Like, I was an addict. Like, I remember sitting with my parents and them sitting across the couch from me and saying, do you even love us? How can you keep hurting us like this? And I remember sitting there thinking, I do love you. Like, I love you so much. I don't know. I don't know. I would love to know how I can keep hurting people I love. So, you know, I sometimes think forgiveness is just letting yourself be humble enough to realize that the things people do to us are not foreign to us, right? Like, we are all capable of hurting each other, of hurting people that we love, and we do it in different ways. I was able to get to the point where I was like, okay, you couldn't deal with your pain and your humanity, and so you use sex and women. I understand part of that, because I also couldn't deal with pain and humanity, and I used drugs and alcohol, because I think either we deal with our pain or we refuse to deal with our pain and we pass it on to our people.
And you say that your marriage wasn't a failure, it was just complete.
Yeah, absolutely. So somebody said that to me afterwards. Like, it was during an interview, and somebody said, isn't it awful that you went through all of this, and they picked up Love Warrior, that you went through all of this and still your marriage failed? And I had never heard that question before, so I just burst out laughing, because they might as well have said to me, and now you are an elephant. Like, I wanted to be like, fail? Are you looking at me? Like, do you see how freaking happy I am? Like, does this look like a woman whose last 10 years have been wasted? Like, Craig and I met each other just busted up and broken and confused, and we were babies and we were idiots, and we spent 10 years together and somehow came out on the other side wholer and healthier and braver and knowing more of who we are, and walking through fire that a lot of people couldn't walk through together. And we have these 3 badass kids. Like, failure, I can't even, it's like people think that love is only a success if it lasts forever, which is ridiculous. Love is a success if it changes us and grows us, right? That's it. So there's no love that's wasted, ever.
When did your kids join you on Love Island? What was it like telling them?
Telling them was as horrible as anybody can imagine, telling their kids that their parents are getting divorced. Their dad is like the most amazing father. And I don't know what people mean by that, other than he just puts them first constantly, and they're his life. And so I was not in a situation where that is not present, you know? So that part was unbelievably hard. And I remember looking at Tish once. She's my middle child, and she's like really sensitive, and just the one that I thought would break. I just thought, this child cries for 6 hours if she can't find her shoe. So a divorce is really going to take her out of the game. So I remember looking at her. She was like looking in the mirror, getting ready or something. And I remember thinking, okay, I am staying in this marriage for this little girl. But would I want this marriage for this little girl? Like, if she would be in 30 years, would I want this for her? And that's where I figured out, oh my God, motherhood is not about martyring yourself, right? It's not my job to show her how to slowly die so you don't rock the boat. It's my job to show her how to live, right? To live bravely, and that you can live true to yourself and true to your people. I think that that's another crap lie that women get. Like, if you dare to follow your path and your truth, you're screwing over your people, you're selfish. I don't know. I think that's why all of these little girls are learning how to slowly die from their moms. You know, it's like we use motherhood as an excuse to not be brave with our lives. So the biggest act of faith that I had was, okay, if this is the truest, most beautiful path for me, then this is also the truest, most beautiful path for my little girl. And it is not my job to protect her from this. It's just my job to hold her hand and walk her through every bit of this, right? It's like I thought for the first half of her life that my job was to just shield her from every fire, just protect her from every fire on earth. When in actuality, what I learned was that my job was to walk her through the fires, right? Walk her through, because we do not need children who are good fire avoiders. We need children who know they're fireproof, right? You know the women in your life who have been through so many fires that they are not even freaking afraid anymore. And they don't have to avoid pain anymore. They don't have to avoid they just walk right through because they've been through enough to know that they're not even flammable. Like, oh my God, it didn't kill me. It will never kill me. It will never kill me. And the funny thing about this little girl now is that she's so much less afraid. I mean, she's beat up like life does, right? Like she got the rug pulled out from under her. She no longer lives in fantasy land where nothing bad ever happens. But she's so much more grounded and so much braver, and she's a different child. I mean, it's like she's not waiting for the other shoe to drop anymore.
I've heard you said before that the fact that your new partner was another woman was actually not a big deal to your kids. Like, their focus was your mum and dad are splitting up, but the woman thing was not a big deal to them.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a fierce gay rights activist since my kids were born. So, like, this is not, celebrate, not tolerance, but actual celebration of who people are is a family value of ours. Like, nobody in my family is even allowed to have a different opinion than I. I am fully intolerant of intolerance. Okay. So, for example, my kids had been to more gay pride parades than Abby had. And she's like the gayest gay that ever gayed. Okay. So, yeah, I'm so grateful that I've always taught my kids that, we celebrate who people are on every level, and we stand up for people who are marginalized in any way. Because when it came time for them to live it out, they didn't have to unlearn any crap. They were open-armed to Abby. And also, she's a miracle. I mean, it truly feels like she's not somebody that was added to our family. And Craig would tell you the same thing. It feels like she was missing from our family. Like, the way she parents each child is exactly what they needed at that point. I mean, I think some of Tish's courage now. I mean, she came in, and just a little example. So I had pulled the kids out of sports because honestly, they're not good at them. So I just thought, I just felt like, well,
what's the point?
They're not good at them. Like, let's try something else, right? And so Abby, and also, like, I think I say that, but I actually think what I was afraid of is that they're not good at it, so their feelings will be hurt and they'll be sad.
So
and
true.
Girl, we got the suckiest parenting memo, right? It was it was like my mom's generation. It's like every parenting generation gets a memo, and my mom's was like, just smoke cigarettes and drink tab and like lock out of the house and just, call them back at night. That's it.
So
you don't even actually have to know their names.
And
right?
we got parenting as a verb.
Oh my God. We got the worst memo. We got the one that's like, okay, so we're going to give you this baby and this is great. It's a human. But like, your job is to make sure that life never happens to this thing. So like, if you could just take it home and make sure that like no one ever frowns at this child and like they win everything that they do, and no one ever hurts their feelings, and no raindrop falls on their head, and if you could just make sure that life is perfect for them, then that's a good job. And that's what we freaking do. And that's why our kids suck, because none of them know what it means to be human, right? Like, they don't.
Or feel pain.
So they don't know how to feel pain. No. They don't know how to lose. They don't know how to fail. They don't know how to hurt. They don't know how to feel pain without causing pain. They don't know how to be vulnerable. So Abby came in and she's like, all right, well, the thing is that sports teaches them a lot of other things too. And so everyone's going back to sports because these kids they're just wimps. And so everyone's going back to soccer. So I was like, okay, we'll try it. Why not? Craig was a professional soccer player too. He was like, thank you, Jesus, for Abby. Thank you. Now it's 2-1. So let's just get them all back in. And you will not believe this. My little sensitive, I call her the canary in the coal mine because she's always like, if she is not captain of her freaking soccer team right now, and it's not because she's good. It's because she's figured out that if you're not that good of a player, you have to be a good leader. So she's like figured out how to use her strengths to make herself important on the team. She knows how to lose. She loses and does not have a nervous breakdown. I mean, it's like this child has changed. So, and then I have a youngest, Emma, and she has always been this like wild child. Like she's like this little androgynous angel. Like she has like crazy haircuts and like wears ties. And this was way before Abby. And I was like, what? Like I have like my lashes on. I don't know what's going on. And and so then Abby walks in and she's like, oh my God. It's like Abby has given her permission to be herself too. She has this different version of what it means to be a woman in Abby than she had with me.
And the dynamic between your wife and your ex-husband, has that always been as amazing as it looks?
Yeah, and listen, I think, like, first of all, I think it's kind of annoying. We're annoying because it's like, oh, it's so perfect, like, great, so awesome. Listen, first of all, one of the things that I've been resisting lately is sometimes I don't want to talk about it as good as it is because, first of all, I'm used to being like the truth teller in terms of everything sucks, right? So everything's so hard and I think that's a woman thing. Like everybody loves me when I'm a mess, right? But once I get to this strong, beautiful place, people are like, I'm not relating to you as much. But that's because we know from every study on earth that the happier, more successful a woman becomes, the less we like her, right? The happier, more successful a man comes, the more we like him and the more we trust him. So I think we need to fight that. And I have to fight it in myself because if I'm going to be honest about how hard things are and I'm going to be honest when I feel weak, I need to also be honest when things are beautiful and when I feel strong, right? Like I'm not going to pretend I'm stronger than I am and I'm not going to pretend that I'm weaker than I am. I think women have to also stand in that. Yes, let's be truth tellers when things are hard. And let's also be truth tellers when things are awesome.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Like that thing where everything has to be a mess, where every time we report any kind of progress or triumph or beauty, we have to preface it by, oh, but like, oh, it was such a mess before, or like, oh my God, my house, or oh my God, my whatever. So I'm trying to own that part too, you know? Having said that, because it is beautiful and we've worked our asses off for it. And every time somebody wants to say to me, oh, is it really that good? Why don't you be honest? I want to say, have you read anything I've ever done? Have you read Love Warrior? Good God. It's been a rough road. Okay?
Yeah.
So, but I do think this. Whenever somebody asks me about how it can be so good, what I hate more than anything in my life is bringing up shame in anyone else. So what I need to remind people is that I think some of the pain that happens in divorce is because there was so much passion in the marriage, right? So when you're passion in a relationship, it's like the line between love and hate, like love and hate are right next to each other, right? They're very, very close. And so in many passionate loves, the breakup also has that negative passion in it, right? It's hard. Craig and I didn't have a passionate love. And that's something that he would say too. We didn't have passion. We were what we are now. Like we were amazing parents. Yeah. We got married because I was pregnant. Like we got married because it was the right thing, not because we were the right one. And we both know that, right? So you know, much of our marriage was trying to figure out, how do we get this passion thing that other people have? Where is it? Right? So our ability to not have fiery feelings about each other that make family life hard is because we didn't have them before. Right? Like you can maybe have a fairy tale marriage or a fairy tale divorce, but you can't have both. And then the other thing that we say all the time is that Craig didn't have the ego thing where he didn't ever have to say, why am I not man enough?
Yeah.
Because would only have to say, well, I just wasn't woman enough.
Yeah.
Like there, right?
I could never have made her happy, really.
Right. It wasn't me. It was her.
Yeah.
Right? It's an out kind of for all of us. It's a narrative that we can tell that has nothing, it's not personal.
I just love your Instagrams and how much you love Abby and how much she loves you. And I follow both of you. And it's so refreshing because I agree with you. I think that in some ways the pendulum has swung quite far, where we went from sending out our representatives and having to say everything was great to then it being a badge to say that everything's shit. And if you say that you're happy or you're proud or you're in love, then you're somehow letting down the team.
Yes.
And that sucks.
Thank you for saying that. That is exactly how I feel. Like I'm letting down the team.
You're really not, because as you say, it's like
I think of something.
You're not an Instagram model who's like, look at my bum. You know, it's not that fakery.
No.
It's like, it's genuine happiness. It's like I always say, you don't have to be sort of grateful and blessed. Be proud. Like when something's good, say it's good.
Yes, absolutely. And when the thing is that when you're honest when things are hard, you've earned the right to also be honest when things are good. Like we want them both. Your
friend Oprah says that too, in terms of, she says, trouble and pain and hardship will find you, or maybe you say it. It'll come knocking on your door. Like you don't worry, it will find you.
Absolutely.
When things are good, you're not going to ruin everything by saying things are good.
Yeah. Do you know what? When I was sitting with Oprah at a table, one of the first times that I had dinner with her, and I had said something that was like self-deprecating, because that's like one of my things. And she turned to me and said, as Maya says, she was quoting Maya Angelou, she said, modesty is a false affectation. Be gone with it.
Oh, that's fabulous.
And I was like, oh my God. First of all, I'm just like overheating. I'm like, I'll figure out what the hell that means later. I'm just going to stop saying words.
You've said that, I just love this quote, your sexuality is Abby.
Yeah, isn't that so
I
cheesy?
love that so much. And I know so many women in their 40s who have fallen in love with other women and for the first time in their lives been with women. Mm-hmm. What's that about?
Girl, I don't know what it is with other people. I mean, I do think that maybe there comes a point in our life where we realize that all we've done is pick one of four roads that has been put in front of us, and that maybe we just, instead of following another path, we want to actually be the pioneers of our lives because we only have this one. I think that there's some of it that, also like when people say to me, I think a lot of people from just the generation before me and maybe mine get scared because of it. They're like, what's going on? Like all these kids are like trans and like bi, and what's going on? Why is everyone so gay all of a sudden? And I think that that's precious, first of all. But I think that it's not that more people are gay or on the spectrum of sexuality. It's that people have always been on the spectrum of sexuality. But since, this sweet millennial generation just has no shame about it and is like, it's like what happens all the time when one person tells their story. Then you hear it, and that gives you freedom to admit who you are. Listen, people have always been 50 shades of gay, okay? Yeah. It's just that they were dying slowly inside because they thought they were the only ones, and they thought they couldn't speak it out loud because nobody else was speaking it out loud. So I think that, I don't know, I think that we're getting to the point, as soon as I announced to the world that I was in love with Abby, anybody asked me for a solid 6 months. Every interview started with, so what are you?
Yeah.
Are you gay? Are you bi? Like, what are you? And sister, I got to the point where I would sit down at dinner with Abby and I would say, you listen to me. We are not getting up from this table until we figure out what I am. I am not standing up because I need an answer for these people, and it is ridiculous to not know what you are.
The people want to know.
The people want to know, and I am one of those people. Right?
And what's the answer? My sexuality is Abby. I love that.
Yeah, I think the answer is there's no answer. I think we're getting beyond that. I think the categories just make people feel safe and whatever. I mean, the only thing I relate to now is maybe fluid. Like, I don't relate to someone who pretended I was straight for 20 years and now suddenly I'm gay. That doesn't feel true to me. I know that I feel fluid about it. I feel like when people ask you to define yourself, it is a very weird thing to ask a human being to define herself. Human beings are by definition beings that grow and change. And so I think of my sexuality like I think of as my faith. It's like a current, and I'm not going to make it change. I'm going to just feel it and listen to it. And I hope my sexuality evolves forever, but I know that it will always evolve in in relationship to Abby. Like I'm just going to love her forever. And I'm just going to be Glennon. When they're like, what are you? I'm like, I'm Glennon.
Is it because you've both walked, you've had this in merging your lives. She's taken on this life as a mother and the whole parenting world. And then you're sort of a newcomer to the world of, well, not a newcomer, but as I guess a member of the LGBTQI community.
Yeah.
How have you kind of navigated that? Or have you just gone, I'm part of it, but I'm Glennon and we're Glennon and Abby first and foremost?
God, I don't know.
Yeah, right.
I mean, listen, we spoke at our gay pride parade. Like, again, I've been speaking at gay pride parades for a really long time.
So that's not a new thing. It's not like, how does this work?
No, I'm like this. Now I'm just like, look, I'm here. And I'm like really here now. Yay. But I remember my friend Jen was talking about when I announced to my community, because I don't know if you know, but my community, although it's changed a little bit, is very faith-based starting out. Like, there's a lot, like,
you were a Christian mommy blogger.
Oh God, it'll be on my friggin' tombstone. Okay, Christian mommy blogger.
Don't worry, I own a media company and I also get called a mommy blogger. It's a real putting you in your place thing.
Yes, it is. My friend Rachel Held Evans is this like fierce writer, and she told me that she got interviewed and the headline was Christian mommy blogger, and she doesn't even have kids.
Well, I say anyone with an internet connection and a uterus is a mommy blogger.
Is a mommy blogger. That's right. It's very dismissive, right?
Yeah, it's really incredibly patronizing.
Yeah. I remember thinking, okay, I just released a #1 New York Times bestseller. I've raised $9 million through my nonprofit. Can you imagine a man who's raised $9 million through his nonprofit and has 2 New York Times bestselling authors? He's a daddy blogger.
Yeah. Oh, he's just a daddy blogger. That's right. So did your community evolve?
Well, listen, I think that one of the most amazing things and what I've learned about building community in our lives is that we had better build our community based on our values. I had been talking to my community online and on the road about inclusion and justice and celebration. I had drawn a line in the sand about what we will and will not accept in terms of who we say is in and out with God. I had literally written an essay that went viral called "This is a Mountain I'm Willing to Die On" about gay kids the years before. And it was a letter that I wrote, a pretend letter that I wrote to Chase on, like, in case he ever told me that he was gay.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 days after I announced I was marrying Abby, and I was with Abby, sent me back a mountain I'm willing to die on, but she changed the name from Chase to Glennon. Oh. So the whole letter, it was my words, but it was written back to me to Glennon, the whole thing. So this is what would happen if you ever came to us and told us you were gay. We would love you. We would blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it's not even what I was going to tell you.
That's amazing. But that speaks to how welcoming your community were. I mean, how embracing of you guys.
Yeah. And so that's when I think about like how I had basically over the years been creating the community that I needed. Right? Like I'd been working to create these people that we had created a culture there that they had no other choice. That's who was there, So I think about that all the time with family and the friends we make and the companies we're a part of and the faith organizations we're in. We have to work to actively create the kind of communities that will become the kind of communities that we need, that we will eventually need to fall into when life happens.
And you did that.
Yeah. And the story, it was interesting because the story, right, was like, oh my God, Glennon's in love with Abby Wambach, and they're like all the TMZ stuff.
A lot of people don't know. Abby also is famous. Like, you are famous, and Abby's super famous as well.
Yeah, Abby's way more famous than I am. Like, it's not even comparable. It's like, I don't know if you know, in this country, like, nobody knows who the hell I am, and people stop Abby on the street constantly. So the new thing is, that makes me laugh all the time, is that somebody, no matter where we are, somebody will come up to me and they'll come up and I'll get like my little humble sweet face on, because like they're recognizing me, I'm sure of it. And they'll go, I'm such a huge fan. And I'll go, thank you. And they'll go, do you think she cares if I get a picture? And I'm like, no, asshole, it's fine. Go ahead. Take it.
So you've become a really good photographer.
Yeah.
Give me a phone.
Blogger, photog.
Yeah. Just before I let you go, I know I'm so grateful for your time, but just tell me about your wedding day.
So our wedding was at our little church, the first church that I really became a member of, because it was the first church that I ever was a part of that just fully accepts human beings for who they are, no matter what their faith is, their gender, their whatever. So it's just like this place that's full of freedom and justice and beauty. And our families were there, and Abby read the most beautiful vows to our children ever. And my sister stood up there with us, and I don't know. It was the most magical. It was a coming home. It was just a coming home.
Glennon, what did you wear?
So listen to this. I think the hardest part of life is getting dressed. And so for someone who has a hard time getting dressed for coffee, like trying to figure out what to wear to my wedding where I actually care what the other person thinks I look like. So listen to what happened. You're not going to believe this, especially you if you love clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I was like, screw it. I'm just going to wear this sundress. I'm just going to wear this white sundress. It's fine. I don't want to think about it anymore. But my sister was sad about that. She just didn't think it was right. So 3 weeks before my wedding, she sends me this website of the most beautiful dresses I've ever seen. And she was like, Glennon, this is how I imagine you on your wedding day. They were like handmade, stunning, like this designer from Israel. Like they take like years to get, ridiculously expensive. And I'm like, thanks a lot. Like, thank you. Like, what the hell? Now I know these exist. So that's awesome. Thank you. So 2 days later, she calls me. She's like, Glennon, I'm about to forward you an email. Read it. Okay. My sister has written this designer in Israel a letter about me and about Abby and about how this is my love and this is the bravest thing she's ever seen me do. Okay. This woman, this designer from Israel, has just finished reading Love Warrior.
Oh, no way.
She writes my sister back this email. She makes me a handmade beaded dress fitted to my Smurf proportions perfectly. I just say to her, she's like, which dress do you want? I'm like, I don't care. You're the expert. Like, pick a dress. Send it to me. I'll wear whatever you send.
Oh.
It is like, it was a work of art. And I felt like, I could actually start crying talking about it, but I felt like, so much of our work and your work, like we do what we do to connect with and serve other women, and like to be walking down that aisle with this woman across the world, and like my art served her and her art was with me. Oh, it was ridiculous.
That's something divine. Like you got to say that's bigger than, no matter what you believe, you've got to think that there's some kismet in that whole situation.
Yes. Yeah. So I got it like 3 days before the wedding, and I put it on and was like, oh, this is utterly perfect. And that was it. Done.
And what did Abby wear?
So Abby wore a beautiful white shirt with this unbelievably gorgeous red velvet jacket. Now, the crazy thing about that is, I know you've read Love Warrior. So my friend Allison sent me a picture from our wedding day maybe a month after our wedding, and it's framed, and it has a picture of Abby and I in the sanctuary with us holding each other's faces with Abby's red velvet jacket on. And she pulled out a paragraph from Love Warrior, which I had written 2 years before. And it said, it was the scene where I walked into the church and saw Mary. Okay, first of all, Abby's real name is Mary. Okay. So the paragraph says, I put my feet on the soft red velvet, and it felt like warm and exciting. And it said, I see Mary there for the first time. And I look at Mary, and she's real, and I love her, and she loves me, and Mary is who I've been waiting for.
Shut up.
Girl.
That's next level.
2 years before I'd ever met Mary. Abby, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just, that was one of those days where I was like, exactly, whatever you believe, you gotta believe that there's something, like there's something guiding us. And, and maybe that something is just like that voice inside of you that knows, that knows what to do and knows that the path forward often isn't what anybody else has planned for you.
You can find Glennon's book Love Warrior at apple.co/Mamma Mia, or go into a bookstore and order it. I got the paper version, and oh my God, I can't, I'm just going to read it again and again. It's one of those just brilliant classics. This show has been produced by Eliza Ratliff. I'm Mia Friedman, and I will see you on mammamia.com.au. Do you like to have your opinion heard? I do. Do you want to win some skincare goodies? I do. Head to mammamia.com.au/no filter feedback, all one word, to tell us what you think of our No Filter podcast so that we can make our podcast even better. And the best bit for you is that you get the chance to win an amazing skincare pack.